Range. Oh, I hope. Yeah. I think then you just drag this over. Yeah. Okay, sorry guys.
Noch die Präsentation.
Jeez.
Oh, down to the right. You have to start the presentation.
Okay. Oh, you got it.
And start the presentation. Just start anywhere you want. Go here. Take the window back.
Okay.
And then start the presentation down here.
Right here? Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm super technically advanced, if you haven't already guessed. I'm Alana Range, and I am the CEO and founder of Radish Lab, and we're a creative agency based in Brooklyn, New York, and also now in Berlin. And today I want to talk about a couple of specific climate change and energy data visualizations that we worked on at Radish Lab to try and share some of the experiences that we've had about kind of communicating complex data using user experience design and interactivity, but also just straight up communication skills. This is our office in Brooklyn. We're a full service agency, so we do everything from kind of strategy through design to development. The premise of Radish is that we basically say that we believe in good design for nice people, and essentially we work almost exclusively with nonprofit organizations, educational institutions, science organizations, and our challenge is always to kind of help these organizations communicate clearer messages so that they actually end up having more impact and more time to kind of focus on their own mission. And when it comes to sustainability and usability, I think for us, this is very much at the foundation of kind of our value structure. You know, design and web development and that sort of stuff is not new. There are lots of people doing it, but we really choose to focus exclusively on this stuff because I think that these organizations don't always have a lot of money or have a lot of time to focus on telling their stories well. And so we think that with a little bit of good design and the right technology, we can actually help facilitate these messages better. And these are just a few of the organizations that we've worked with. And so just to kind of set the stage, which I'm sure you have already had set this morning, but from our perspective and from mine, usability is not just about user experience design and kind of showing people how to move through something. It's about simple clarity. And so there are all sorts of things that go into making an experience clear, whether it's making sure that everyone knows what the menu button looks like, or whether it's just choosing language that's clear and simple. And so when we approach a problem or a project, we're really trying to think about, first and foremost, what is the story? What is the essence of the story that you want to communicate? And how can we make that as clear as possible? So data, which we've talked a little bit about this morning. I'm going to talk about two specific data stories, and we do all sorts of things at Radish. We build websites, we do annual reports, we do strategic stuff, and data visualizations are something where clients will come to us with a big Excel sheet of data that usually looks something like this, and they'll say, I think there's a story in here. This is a set of climate change data about kind of what a series of US cities' temperatures are now and what they're looking in 100 years. And this is kind of where we start with this stuff. So from a usability perspective, this is super not user-friendly unless you're mathematically adept, which I'm not. And simply
Prozess für das, was wir jetzt haben,
look at these numbers and figure out how to make this consumable, make it usable, and help the organization tell their story. So like, where do you even start with that kind of stuff? I just want to show you a couple of very simple examples to show you how we think about it. This is, a visualization, but it's very simplest. It's basically taking numbers and helping people visualize exactly what the breakdown of things are.
In the last few years, there's been a surge in kind of this idea of storytelling through infographic or data visualization. This is, I just pulled this off the internet, but I thought it was cute because you don't actually have to, and you can really, it's not very clear, you can't read really what's in those little white boxes, but you don't really have to. Because the premise of this is that it's showing you how big the brains of these species are compared to their body sizes. And it's all done just with pictures. This is one of my favorite simple data visualizations, and I talk about it a lot. This is just a GIF, and it's animating through about 25 years of data. And this is the most popular baby name per state in the US over a period of time. And they also have it for guys. Yeah, I know. You bet you know a Jennifer if you were born in the 80s. But what's interesting is you can very simply start to track trends. And what I love about this is that it's super personal. It's like most of us know an Amanda or Jessica, you know, if you were born in the 80s. And what's funny is in the male one, you can actually see people were like naming their kids after presidents, so you can kind of see like who was in office like during the name. Unfortunately, that's not part of the women visualization yet. But this is, you know, the way that this is presented is super simply. You guys don't have to like think about the data behind this, but when you think about the data that went into this visualization, it's a combination of population data, geographic data, census, statistical data, and then over a period of time. So this is powered by some Excel sheet, but I just love how like simple it is. This is a website you should all check out if you like the Olympics, which I do, called olympicstory.com. And this is just a screenshot from the website because I really, as you can tell, I'm not very good talking how to PowerPoint. But the gist here is like, they've taken data from every Olympics ever and put it into a website. And this is just a view of the Turin Olympics, I think? Torino Olympics. And every Olympics kind of has this data, and it's a great user experience for this robust data set where you can kind of dive in and compare all of the Olympics and see how many women competed, how many men competed, go a lot deeper into the data if you want. But this is a kind of more robust data user experience website that if you're interested in nerding out on that stuff. Plus you learn a lot about sports. Okay, so when we think about whether it's climate change data, whether it's energy data, whether it's has nothing to do with climate or energy, big and small data both work. So a lot of clients are like, we don't have any big data, so we can't do a data visualization. We can't use that as a storytelling device. But that's not a problem. Everybody has data, and the big data is sometimes not always the easiest to work with, as we'll see. So we have a kind of like a few golden rules that we use when we tackle usability challenges when it comes to storytelling. And so the first is, if you guys are going to kind of think about this stuff, organize and clean up your data. So someone's going to have to do it at some point, and you can do it, or you can pay us to do it. But I recommend you guys do it first. And just go through there and make sure all your data is formatted correctly so that when you actually start to pull it into systems that help visualize, you see what you're supposed to see. Know your audience. This is a huge thing for usability. And interestingly, everybody's always talking about like user personas and what's the user pathway, and it comes down to audience. Who is using the site now, or who's using the product, and who do you want to use the product? So if you're developing something new, you have to think about who that person is. What do they like? How much time do they have? Do they know, do they know how to use an iPad? All of this stuff. And so many times, people just don't know who their audience is. It's like, oh, we want to build this visualization for the general public. And it's like, what does that mean? Who is that? specifically who. And you'll see when I talk about the climate change stuff, there has to be a really specific audience for that climate change information if you want to connect it to the user. Distill your story. So figure out what your point is. This is like a surprisingly difficult thing for people to do. You have a big data set and people are like, yeah, there's like a story somewhere in here, like let's visualize it and share it. And we're always just like, well, just what is it? What is the story? What's the point that you want? And most of the time, that's the hardest thing about the project, is actually figuring out what the story is. And then personalize it. So this is part of the user experience design process, which I believe if you're going to make something successful that's going to connect with people, connect with that audience that you have clearly identified, you have to personalize it. So it has to feel like it means something to that person who is using the product. Okay, so initially I was just going to show you one project that we worked on, but then I was like, that's kind of boring. Maybe I can show you two and give you a bit of context about how to think about these problems on a broader level. So the first project I want to talk about is something that we did for the Woodrow Wilson Center. And they're a American think tank, and they came to us with this humongous spreadsheet of data. It had 10 different sheets in it, and just hundreds of thousands of data points. And they said, we have a story here. We want to tell an energy story of the difference in consumption and production between China, the US, and Canada. So you can imagine all of the data that would go into a set like that. Interestingly, the hardest part about this project was figuring out exactly what the story was. Obviously, there's a difference between the way that the US, Canada, and China consumes and produces energy. But the question that we had for the Woodrow Wilson Center was who cares? How are we going to make people care about this? It took us a year, 1 year, 12 months, to just get to the point of actually sketching the visualization part of it. We had to work with the client to cull the data and get it down to a sizable amount and clarify the story before we could even start to think about how we were going to present this. The Woodrow Wilson Center is a pretty high-level organization. They're appealing to academics, policymakers, economists. And so, one of our major concerns here when it came to usability and communication was we didn't want to dumb the visualization down. We wanted to keep it kind of rich and robust with information so that the user felt like it was a tool that they could use, but at the same time, we wanted to make it accessible. So we wanted it to feel easy and intuitive and like something that you wanted to spend some time in and explore. This is a screenshot of the final product that we built. And it was an embeddable data visualization. So basically you could take it as an iframe and put it into different blogs and websites and that sort of thing. And it's still pretty complex. So you can see there's a top level where you can choose kind of one variable, second level where you can choose a second one. You can toggle total population versus per capita, and then these lines animate and show you the difference between all of those things. When it came to kind of communication and thinking about how we were going to make this resonate and feel user-friendly, we felt like there were a couple of problems. One is that, this is all done in TCEs, which equals 1 metric ton of coal, which, what is that? I don't even know. And so we broke it down, and that amount of energy equals roughly the amount of energy needed to run all the washing machines in the United States for 30 seconds. So even that, for us, was something that was oh, okay, that seems like a lot of energy. And the other thing we made the client do was for every single statistical result in this interactive. So there's a lot of variables here, but every time they pull a result where the graph animates, we made the client think about we call it a wow factor, but the takeaway point. So if you don't really understand what's going on, the very least you read that and it contextualizes it for you and it gives you some extra information about what the story is. So what we learned with that is that you really have to sometimes work for the story, and that it's a really important part of the process. If you're going to build something user-friendly, if you're going to do something where you're going to kind of help people digest data, you need to make sure that you're kind of working with a data set that is manageable, which means you sometimes have to kill your darlings. Is there anybody in here who works specifically with data sets or does science or like gets links around data? Yeah, so it's like really hard when you're looking at your own data to be like, oh, that's not so important. You just spent like 12 years of your life creating this data set. And so, one of the hardest processes we go through is just working with people to make sure that they know it's about just not oversimplifying, just simplifying, so that there's a really clear narrative to what you're developing. Apply the rule of 6, 30, and 60. This is a really good usability principle that we use at Radish Lab. I think it's good. The idea is that, like, if you've really got only 6 seconds to capture someone's attention, which is actually a long time on the internet, you just think like 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, you've already clicked somewhere else if it's not super interesting. And so we try and think about everything we build, whether it's data visualizations or websites, with this rule, so that if you say you've really only got 6 seconds to capture someone's attention, what's the first thing you're going to show them? What's the one thing that they should take away from that experience? And it should not be like them trying to figure out how to use your stupid thing that you just built. It should be like, oh, this is a story about this, or this is the main point that you want them to take home. Then imagine you've captured them for 6 seconds. What are you going to show them if you have them for 30? What are you going to show them if you have them for 60? And so, another way to think about that is like make a list, 1 through 10, and prioritize your information by kind of like what's most important for the user to see. But I like to think of it in terms of timing. And then finally, kind of what's the dinner party takeaway, which again is kind of the same principle. If you go to a dinner party after work, you spend some time on the internet that day, and you've consumed a bunch of different content, what's that like one super cool piece of information that you are going to share with your friends that makes you sound super smart? And as the company or the person creating that story, you want to feed that to the user. It should be really easy for them to take that home and feel like they learned something. So that was a pretty complicated visualization project for us, and while it worked and we felt good about it, we felt like there wasn't enough personalization. It was still pretty academic, and the client was happy with it, but one of the things that I always feel like in this talk is kind of like revealing is like
I don't necessarily think that was like the best thing that we ever built. And the next one I'm going to show you is not either, but we also learned something about how to personalize data a little differently. So Climate Central is a climate change organization based in Princeton, New Jersey. And they generate climate data, but they also report on climate change as like a nonpartisan organization. So they came to us and they said, we've got a really great story. We have data from 1,001 cities in the US, which is also just like a super weird number. It's like 1,001 Dalmatians. No, okay. So they were like, we have data from 1,001 different cities in the US, and we know what their temperatures are now in the summertime, and we know what their temperatures are going to be in 100 years. And it's dramatic. So for instance, they were like, New York is going to feel like Florida in 100 years, which when you hear that, you're like, okay, that sounds hot. And when we looked at the data, we realized there were a lot of those kind of stark comparisons. So that initial screenshot that I showed you of like the actual Excel sheet, that's what we got from the client. And the question from them was like, how do we make this into something that is going to really resonate with people? So when it comes to communicating climate change, is there anybody here working specifically in the climate change realm? Okay, one hand at the back. Well, good for you. It's a hard place to work. And it's the audience in, well, actually probably not here as much. In the US, as I'm sure most of you know, climate change is not wholeheartedly believed in. And so there is a very interesting communication challenge when you are developing content around climate change. Organizations working to kind of like hammer home that this is actually scientifically happening have a really hard job because they have to connect with a kind of general populace who for the most part is kind of ambivalent about the whole idea. So with that said, we knew we had to do something super easy and that didn't make people feel like they weren't smart enough to understand the premise. So this is what we built. Again, it's an embeddable infographic, which is something that, or interactive, which is something that ultimately really aided the success of this piece. It's a super simple data visualization. The idea is that you either type in your city or you click on one of those red dots, and when you do, the graphic animates and it shows you, it kind of zooms in and it shows you how hot your city will be and kind of what comparable place it will feel like. This, with 1,001 cities represented in this interactive, it covered about 40% of the US population in terms of like the cities that were included in that interactive. And so from a perspective of like making sure that we had most people covered in the US who were like likely to consume this, most of the major cities in the US were covered here. And so we knew that we weren't, the chances of like a user entering their data into this experience and not returning a result, which is like the worst feeling ever, was pretty low because most of the large cities in the US were covered. And the other thing about this was that it was highly shareable and it was highly personalizable. So like a news organization in Phoenix, Arizona could take this interactive, put it on their like weather blog and write a story about it. This interactive was incredibly successful. We launched it in the summer, which was important because it was hot. It wouldn't have done as well as the winter. But it had over 3 million views in its first 2 days on the internet. And we knew that because we put tracking data into the interactive, which is a great way to kind of like, for you guys to know the impact that your work is having as well. But you know, one of the major things that this really did was connect to people on like a very personal level. You could enter your own city into the interactive, you could enter your mom's hometown, you could enter your best friend's hometown, and away you go. You kind of start to get the story. And it wasn't asking the users to do anything other than kind of enter their personal data. One piece of data about themselves. And so from this, we really learned that simple could be beautiful. We didn't have to say much about it. We just had to show the user instead of telling the user what the problem was. Timing is important when it comes to making your content piece, especially I think when it comes to communicating you know, important climate issues, do it in the right season. Personalization is really king. You have to think about what is that thing that's going to, you know, resonate specifically with each of you guys in that room. And finally, we feel like the technology approach really mattered in this one. And that's something, when it comes to usability, if this had just been an interactive that we put on Climate Central's website, like nobody here has heard of Climate Central, I will wager, right? Yeah. So none of you would have seen this, and you probably still haven't seen it, but you're in the wrong target market. But this is something where, because we made it shareable, and we basically said, take this piece of content, put it on your website, share it, write about it, use it. It got incredible traction, and that's something where this is just like simple iframe technology. And so, you know, in addition to building a good user experience, kind of taking user experience design to another level and actually making it easy for people to extend that content's life is another good approach. And so basically, when it comes to, from our perspective, these kind of two like energy and climate stories, they centered all around kind of making it easy for our user to understand, knowing who our audience was. Those two things were targeted at different audiences. We had like an academic one and then a kind of general public one, and the user experience was very different on both of those. Keep that like simplifying and streamlining kind of in your workflow, and know what your core takeaways are when it comes to storytelling, because it doesn't matter how good your user experience designer is or your user interaction designer is, if you don't know what your story is, and if you don't have like clear content that you're going to communicate. That's it. That's my talk. Thank Thanks for listening.
Maybe one question before lunch.
Hi, thank you for your talk. Since it has to be quick, I have a quick question. For your last visualization, I think I like very much the idea to make it comprehensible, that people can say, oh, it will be that warm as it's now in Miami. But then imagine this guy living, because you said personalization, this guy living in New York, he said, oh, that's great, it's not threatening because I have all the culture and other infrastructure of New York and the temperature of Miami, right? So, and the other question is, what comparative city do you show people living in Phoenix or in Miami? So how does it scale?
Well, so that was interesting, and this interactive, actually the comparable cities for Florida and Phoenix are actually, we had to throw them out to like Abu Dhabi because there was nothing that was going to be that hot in the US. And so that's actually one of those things that's pretty shocking. And on this particular view, we kind of highlighted the cities with the most interesting data. So Phoenix actually zooms you all the way out and shows you what the comparable temperature will be in the Middle East. And when it comes to exactly, I mean, you're never going to be able to kind of like reach the people who are like, I love hot weather, like what's the problem? But I think the thing that we wanted to kind of capture here was that the entire nation is getting hotter. Everything is moving south, and we didn't want to bombard people with the specific science that goes into that, because it's not right for that audience. And so the essence that we wanted to capture here was that there was like an actual stark geographic difference, and just that initial shock value of seeing New York kind of zoom down to Florida and feel like, oh my God, that seems like a big difference, is the kind of core reaction that we were looking for. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Alana.
Thanks, guys.
For your talk.
Have a good lunch.
Thank you.